For me, whenever I'm struggling or whenever I'm thinking, I cannot do that, this is way too hard. I remember mom came as a 20-something-year-old kid with another kid into a country that she doesn't know, and she made a life. I saw my mom doing that every step of the way. And I think this is like the biggest effect that she left on me. The only thing that you can regret is not trying. But if you try and you fail, it's fine. You will not regret it. But if you don't try, I think that's what you regret.
Welcome back to Swirl Radio. I'm your host, Eric.
And I'm Aika. At Swirl Radio, we stand for those who messed up, ruined relationships,
Bombed a grade, said the wrong thing, lost the ideal client,
overpromised, underdelivered, showed up late, and missed their shot.
Today, we're talking about what happens when everyone around you is doing the same thing, and you're the one asking, is any of it actually working?
Because sometimes the bravest move isn't just keeping up, it's stepping back and thinking for yourself.
We are excited to welcome VP of Design at SAP, who scaled design at AWS, led at Miro, and founded startups across the world. But before all that, she was a girl in Jordan, watching her mom open a clinic out of a Bedouin tent, surrounded by a family of doctors and engineers. She believes great design isn't decoration, it's a business engine. And she's writing a book called Making Sense of the Mess. Welcome, Daria. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Daria.
Hello, everyone. And hello, Eric. Hello, Aika. Thank you for having me on the show. Well, what is there to tell? I call myself as a designer, and I call myself as an ex-architect, and I'm currently happily joined SAP a month ago as of today. And I'm leading a great team, getting myself much deeper into the essence of the AI and the business and the foundation. I'm really enjoying it.
That's awesome. Well, Daria, everyone that comes on our show, I ask this one question. We all have to promote ourselves in different ways, but the biggest platform that we promote ourselves on is LinkedIn. So here's my question. If LinkedIn disappeared tomorrow and we all had to reintroduce ourselves without the resumes, without the titles, I would love to know, what would you lead with?
Oh, I think I would lead with I love problem solving. I'm a problem solver. Like, I love this dopamine kick that you get when you get to an answer, when you think about a problem for a month, a year, and then you kind of have this eureka moment, like, I got it. I fixed it. It's there. And that dopamine kick for me, I love it. And that's why I would, if LinkedIn disappeared, I would say, I'm a problem solver. Give me a problem, give me some time, and I will solve it.
I love that. I really want to go back and talk about your history before we get into that, sort of how you became the problem solver that you are today. You mentioned that you felt the pressure of two overachiever parents. I was wondering if you could talk about your childhood a little bit.
So my father is Jordanian and my mom is Russian. And you would wonder, how did that even happen to be, right? But back in the 80s, back in the Soviet Union era, they will take these bright individuals from the Middle East, like Jordan, Syria, Egypt, Lebanon, and they will send them to the Soviet Union to study medicine, engineering. So these are the two options. You become a doctor or you become an engineer. So my dad went to study in Saint Petersburg, and that's where he met my mom. And then I came. So my mom, being a proper Russian from St. Petersburg, where she grew up with art and culture and buildings and streets and life in a big city. She moves to Jordan with my dad after I was born, and then moved together, and we live in Jordan, but not in a big city. We actually lived in I wouldn't even say it's a village. We lived in a little tiny place where most of the people were living in Bedouin tents. And when my mom came, because she was Russian, and then knew that she wouldn't be able to live in a tent, she's not used to that. So they built like a small house for her. and house is an understatement. Like a house is I mean, a room and a bathroom, right? For the first foreigner lady that place ever saw. And back then, my dad was sent to the army because the army was mandatory back then. I was in the 80s, and he left my mom with a child. She didn't speak Arabic. She didn't speak English. And then she was living with my dad's family, me too. And she was a doctor, of course. And she had to open the first clinic in the area. But because she doesn't know Arabic, she doesn't know English, she was communicating by hands. So she would go and she would like mimic with her hands what is hurting, and people would put their hands on what is hurting them, and she would like treat them, right? And then she quickly learned Arabic and so on. So I grew up in that atmosphere, like in a very family oriented. We had goats as pets, rabbits, chicken, a lot of chicken, and we were running around in the street. Like I wouldn't even call it a street; it's a dirt road. We would just run around like a blonde kid in like a little tiny village in Jordan where they haven't seen a foreigner ever. So this is where I grew up, and I remember I remember I was 6 at the time, and I had to go to school, or like the first year of school, but there was no school or kindergarten around where we lived. So my uncle, he was a writer in a newspaper, and because there was no school around me, he wrote an article in the newspaper directed towards one of the princesses who owned one of the nearest school. That princess, her name was Princess Basma, which means Princess Smile. You made our children cry. And then the princess read it, and then she came, and then she was like, well, there's like children has to go to school. So she actually opened a school next to where we lived. And I think we lived like this until for 3 years, until my mom said, no, we have to go to the city. We cannot live like this. My dad came back from the army, and then she forced him to go to the city. So we moved to the city, and I grew up in the city,
Wait, which city?
Amman. So I grew up in the biggest city in Amman.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Okay.
Being that young and you watched your mom open that clinic, right? And you're just watching your mom treat these people and, do all these different things, especially not knowing Arabic or English. I mean, that's pretty amazing that she can do that. So, what type of effect did that have on you and what you're doing now?
I think when I think about what my mom did and how powerful she is, and she until recently, like she retired, but she kind of doesn't know how to stop. Like there's this power. And that for me, whenever I'm struggling or whenever I'm thinking, I cannot do that, this is way too hard. I remember mom, she came as a 20 something year old kid with another kid into a country that she doesn't know, and she made a life. And I think I got a lot from her because I traveled as well a lot in my like after I grew up, I moved to New Zealand. I was living in Australia. I also lived in Japan. So for me, I have this like I'm not afraid. Like you always can open new doors or create a life because I saw my mom doing that every step of the way. And I think this is like the biggest effect that she left on me. Like the only thing that you can regret is not trying. But if you try and you fail, it's fine. You will not regret it. But if you don't try, I think that's what you regret. And I always think of
Right.
that. I always think of her words where what's the worst thing would happen? I go back to Jordan. And that's the thing that always in my mind. Like, let's try. Worst thing, I go back home.
Not a bad thing.
No. Now I want to go back home.
Right, right.
I have a question about what you consider home. I was curious though, before we get to that, about your sisters, because I know you have two sisters. That what was it like growing up with them? Were they are they older? Are they younger?
So I have two younger sisters.
Hmm.
One is 5 years younger and one is 10 years younger. So basically, you would think that because I was like babysitting her and I was raising her. The funny thing, because like my sisters and I, we grew up in with such a huge age difference. There is
Hmm.
slight differences in our personality. But
Okay.
because of my mom and how powerful she is and how my dad was always pushing the bar and pushing the limit, they ended up taking very similar paths. So my two sisters also left Jordan. One is working in Qatar, and the other one is working in Frankfurt. She also works in Amazon in the robotics engineering department. So she's quite small, but when she goes to work, she puts her big helmet and safety boot, and she's handling machines that are 5 times as big as her, and then she's running and telling people what to do. This is not right. So I think they also picked up this power from my mom in a way. So they
Really?
ended up following a very similar path, but also a very different path in personal from a personal matter. But we have similar personalities.
You talked a little bit about ADHD, and it just recently it kind of became a thing that you get diagnosed for. And I was curious, how early in your childhood did you get diagnosed, or did your parents know, and how did that affect growing up?
They had no clue. And that's the interesting thing of ADHD in women. We tend to mask it very well. So
Mhm,
what you see from the outside is high achiever. You really have good grades, good in school, but that takes so much effort to do that. So I think I was in that age or that period of time where it wasn't exactly a thing. If a child is
mhm,
running, a child is running, or they're jumping or they're being fussy. So it wasn't something that you would go and you would diagnose. And I was only diagnosed later in my life. And at that point, things made sense. I'm like, oh, that's why I could not like hold a proper relationship, and that's why I'm so bad with
Mm.
money, and that's why all these things are happening, and my house is messy. And so it's interesting when you have that click in your brain where things starts making sense to you, and you will
mhm,
think, oh, okay, now I know. If I know, I can fix it or I can move my life around it. But if I don't know and I'm looking everyone around me with stable life, stable relationships, don't have like certain obsession with shopping, or the houses are so tidy, and you look like, why not me? Why am I like that? Am I not well behaved, or did my parents did not raise me so well? But then you kind of understand, like, oh yeah, I get it now. It makes sense.
Right.
So in that kind of period, you had mentioned that you wanted to be an artist, like a abstract artist. Can you talk about sort of your evolution from that to like going into architecture and like why that happened in the first place?
So I talked a lot about my mom, but my dad is equally powerful in terms of personality. So my dad, he grew up in this little tiny Bedouin village in a way. And even though that my family comes from, like I come from a big family, but also highly political family. But at that time, in the 70s, like it was, Jordan was a very poor country. So there basically was no money. And he came from this place where it was so poor. Like everyone was so poor. Even our late king was poor and he couldn't afford a bike. And there's a lot of stories about that. And he was living in a little tiny apartment, even though he was the king. So that can tell you a little bit about the country and what was it like in the 70s. So my dad, he comes from a big family. He has 13 siblings, and I think I have over 120 cousins. I don't know all of them. I know the ones that are my age and older, but or like similar age. But I think we have even ones who are 4 years old and 5 years old. So this is how the gap is. So because he was one of the older boys in the family, he would have, and he tells this story, he would have a booklet. He had only had one booklet that he would use it to study. And then my aunts, who are younger than him, they will take it and they will erase everything he wrote during the night. So he would have a something to write on the next day to take to school and study. So my dad comes from this place where everything he has, he built by himself. So he studied
Oh,
very well. He went to Russia. He came back. He did what he needed to do. He's also a doctor. He went into politics. So my dad ended up being working in the Ministry of Health and having like a very big political career. Even now, he's 67. he retired and he got bored and he went back to working. So now he's working in a policy making, right? Like for health. Um, so for me, growing up in such a family with two overachiever parents, I really loved art. So I was studying art since I was maybe 16, 15. So I would go every day to art school. And when I finished my high school, I thought, okay, I want to do something related to art. So I would either it was art or the closest thing to it back then was graphic design. However, this was not an option. So you have two options. Either you go into engineering school or you go into medical school. And at that point, my dad he mentioned like there's a scholarship in Greece, so you can go and study in Greece to become a doctor. And for me, that was an absolute no-no. I had nothing to do with medicine. I did not want to do medicine, so I did architecture. And this was the closest thing I could get to what I wanted. After that, I ended up working in a gaming company that they wanted they call it concept artist in the industry, where you actually design the buildings and the atmosphere of the game. So I was doing art that I like, but also with an architectural flavor. And from there, design, like UI or UX design, was not a thing. It was just like, oh, I'm drawing the buttons. I was like 2005. I'm just drawing the buttons and make them pretty, and then like making them like a sparkly and so on for the game. And then after that, we started understanding, oh, there's this new thing that is coming. It's called the UX designer, and I became a UX designer. But we were talking, you and I, Aika, about that story, and I think for me, the story, I always remember the story, and I always tell it to people, especially my students, because I teach in a school here in Germany. Other people have this tendency to put you down and to take your dreams and crush them. And we listen. For some reason, we listen. So I remember when I was still studying architecture, I really, really wanted to work as a part-time in one of the designs companies, like a graphic design company. And it was one of the ones that were known for being creative in Jordan. And I went there and I knew somebody who knew someone that organized this meeting for us with the owner or like the creative director. And we were talking and he saw my work and he liked it. And then he asked me, we were started talking about art and what I like and so on. And he just looked at me in a way and he said, you're cool, but I'm not going to hire you, because if I hire you, I'm going to hire a starving artist. And for me, that was so soul crushing in a way, that this is all I wanted to do. And he said I'm good. It's just he doesn't like that I like art and this is what I want and this is what I'm so passionate about. And now, like 20 years later, he went into my LinkedIn and he saw that I was working in Amazon. And sometimes he goes and he checks my LinkedIn and then he just like sends hello sometimes. We never crossed path after this. But for me, it's a reminder that, oh, you could have helped me. You could have made my life easier if you would have given me the support. I came to you. I told you what I want. And you crushed it. So when I'm working with students right now, or I'm especially with the juniors, I really take care of what I say, because that crushing dreams, I know how it feels, and I don't want it to happen to anyone, because it's such a hard thing to get out of. So yeah, this like when I remember like my path and how I ended up here, the story always in my mind, and I always remember, don't be that person. Don't be that person. Be careful of what you say. Make sure you look at the bright side of what people do and not what you want them to do, not the bar that you're setting for yourself or them, or the image of success you're setting for yourself. What they want, what is that special thing about them that will make them successful, and put more into that rather than try to morph them into someone that they are not.
I think that's very true. And, I'm a parent and sometimes you really have to catch yourself when you say stuff because you have to like, how is that going to influence them?
Yeah.
Um, your dream was crushed, but how did you rebuild that confidence in yourself to kind of set that path straight?
I think that goes back to having a mother like the mother that I have. Like there's no failure is not an option. You can't fail. This is not an option. If you fall, you get up again and you try again. And if you keep trying, it will work, right? Of course, it goes into this cycle where it shouldn't happen. But yeah, you cry a little bit. Of course, I have emotions like everyone else. We all have emotions, and emotions have the right to exist. And sometimes you do want to curl up in a little tiny room, and then you're like, oh my God, I just need to get it out and cry a little bit. And then you're done. Like, okay, I'm done crying. I'm gonna dust it off, wipe up my tears, and let's do it again. Let's try again. Maybe we'll succeed this time. So yeah, this is the mind that I have.
Daria, you've been all over the place. You moved through Japan, Milena, Germany. You're in McKinsey. You're at AWS. You're Miro. I think I read somewhere that your sister was in Frankfurt. Your family scattered across Qatar and Turkey and Jordan. Through all that movement, how much of this for you was career based versus just finding somewhere where you think you belong?
It's really hard to say when you look at something and then you would say, this is where I belong. And this is the identity question or home. Because you asked me about home, like where is home? I struggled to think of the meaning of home. Because my own home was not a typical home. My mom is Christian. She celebrated Christmas and New Year's. And my dad is Muslim. He celebrated Ramadan and Eid, and we were fasting. I'm baptized, but I also know how to pray, and I was fasting, and I was studying religion, like the Islam religion in school. Um, so the place that I grew up with wasn't exactly a typical place. So I always felt like I'm the odd one out, and I don't have a typical life. Like I didn't look like the other kids. I also didn't behave like them. I didn't eat the same food. I came to Jordan with broken language, like my Arabic was also not very clean. So I was always that one odd out. So moving and going and moving my bags and just going somewhere new was a second nature. Like I moved with my family before, and then I started moving for jobs and I moved to university. So for me, the question of home is very difficult. And recently I was reading a book. It's called The Third Culture Kid. I don't know, have you heard of this concept or
I've
the
heard of
book?
the book.
Yep.
Yeah.
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 And when I read that book, it was my aha moment where I'm like, that's me. That's what I identify with. So a third culture kid is these kids that their home is different than their outside. So for example, you could be like an American living in Germany or German living in America, or like your parents come from a different place than the outside. So outside, your friends are having a certain lifestyle or culture or food or language, but at home you have a different language. So I was a TCK, which is a third culture kid, my entire life, but I grew up as a CCK, which is a cross culture kid. So my two parents came from different cultures. And the interesting thing about this book, which I started noticing myself, is that the TCK and the CCK, even though that the countries, they probably don't match, but because they belong to this non-identity, non-root kind of part of life, they end up connecting very easily. And I started noticing, because I travel a lot for conferences and I travel a lot for work, and I started to notice that most of the people that it's an instant click with, they're either a CCK or a TCK. So for me, I will say I'm a third culture kid because this is what I would identify with. But it's hard to say, oh, like tomorrow I could just pack my bags and leave, go back to living in Asia or go to Latin America or go back to the Middle East.
Right.
I don't have an emotional feeling towards a country. Of course, I would miss my friends and I would miss my life, but I wouldn't have like a strong, like, oh my God, no, I want to live here for the rest of my life.
I can really relate to that.
Maybe that's why we connected immediately, like the first time.
Okay, actually, this makes sense now why you're so good at kind of starting and being the first. When you joined AWS, they didn't really have a lot of designers. What was that like?
So I joined AWS because I was a fan. Like I was a huge fan of the product and I used them. I was one of their customers when I had my own company in Japan. And when I saw the email that they were like, "Hey, do you want to come and work for us?" You know, when your heart rate goes like the heartbeat goes like very, very fast, like, "Oh my God, I have my
Mhm.
dream job. I'm fangirling at the moment." So I didn't ask so many questions in the interview. I was just like really hoping, please accept me. Please
Mhm.
take me. Please say yes. And when I joined, I discovered that I was one of the early designers in AWS. So Amazon has a lot of designers, and it's a separate entity actually. So Amazon, the big company, it has three parts. It has international, Americas, and AWS. So
Mhm.
AWS is a completely separate, and we had like our own rules and so on. Of course, it
Mhm.
was the same, like the culture was the same,
Mhm.
but it was very quirky. And it was very interesting to be the only designer. I think the team had 300, 400 engineers, and I was the only designer, and nobody knew why I was hired.
Oh,
It was just
wow.
somebody hired me, and as a UX designer, so I'm a user experience designer or a product designer. So usually we solve problems. We discuss like the technical parts, and we solve we're problem solvers basically. And I remember my first week, I traveled to Seattle to the headquarters, and I met one of the PMs, and she was like so supportive of me being there. And she brings me, and she said, "I care so much about UX. Look, I'm fighting so hard, the engineers, to change the text on the CTAs on the buttons to be all of it needs to be capital letter, and I'm really fighting for it." And I was thinking, oh my God, we have so many problems and issues in this product that if the text is uppercase or lowercase, really it's least of my concern. It could be butterflies and rainbows for all I care. So it was an interesting time because I was hired, and the designer who I was working with, she was managing the design system, but we didn't even have a design system. So I was
Mm.
releasing a product while she was building a design system. So we're like sitting next to each other in Berlin. And we were like, what are we going to do with that? I was like, I don't know what we're going to do that. We're going to fake it. We're just going to make it look like it is a design system, but it's not a design system. So we had to do a lot of this, and we had to do a lot of education, like educating the engineers about what we do and the power that we can bring to a product. And the story flipped when I was working on one of the products or features that we released with the engineer, and I refused to draw any mockups. I told him I'm not doing anything. We're just going to go to a room and we're going to talk about what is the user experience and the customer experience going to look like. And I'm going to design the technical part. I'll design the APIs with you. We were working on that, and it was such a fun time. Like I think this was one of the most interesting projects I've done, because we would
Mhm.
go in a room and then talk, and then discuss, and then go and show it to our manager and show it to different people, and then they would have like pushback. It's like, no, it needs to be this way, or it needs to be designed a different way. And then we would go and call customers immediately and get their feedback. So it was fun for me. It was fun for the engineer. It was fun for the PM, and the project was very successful. So because it has this success, and we started to talk a lot about it, the
Mhm.
other engineers wanted to have the same. So they wanted to have a similar experience. And that was so much fun, that to see them coming and saying, oh, we need more designers on the team.
Mm.
I'm gonna give you a headcount. I'm gonna give you an engineering headcount so you hire a designer. So, and I think this was like one of the most power moves that I did in
Yeah.
my career, where it wasn't shouting, it wasn't about theory. It was like, let's show them what good looks like and see the impact. So that was really beautiful.
It's pretty difficult to do, especially when you're talking to people that don't speak your language. I was curious, what are those core skills that you learned? And I know that part of your leadership philosophy is about making talented people feel comfortable to be bold. So, what are those core methods that you use to kind of get the buy-in?
So a couple of things here. When you talk about buy-in, you talk about how do you explain the power of UX and how do you bring the value. And luckily, because we have done it so much in the past that now I rarely see a company where you would have to explain it again, right? Like now we're more powerful, and with AI tools, we're even getting our hands dirty with the code and so on. Um, but when you think about empowering designers, you talked a little bit about my philosophy and what I believe in. People do well if the place they are in matching their skills. So you hire a
Mhm.
designer or you hire an employee, and then you put them to do something, to do a task. If the task is not matching their skill, it is, even if they would work so hard, that it doesn't match a core skill that they have. So
Mhm.
probably they're not going to be successful, right? Like if you put somebody who's an introvert and he doesn't want to be in the stage, you have two options. Either you will change their personality, which is very, very hard.
Mm.
Option two, take a look at what are they really good at and put them in a place where they can shine. And oftentimes in my career, the people who were not doing so well, it was not them. It was the task was not according to what their superpower is. So if you switch that, if you put them in a different place, you would probably 80-90% chance they would improve immediately. So I think this is what I believe in when it comes to managing people.
So that takes me here. And you said you believe design thinking isn't just for designers; it's for
Yes.
everyone trying to make sense of the mess. So
Yes.
I actually like that, but I wanna know what you actually mean by that because I could have it wrong. So tell me a little bit more about that.
I actually have a fun story to talk about that, and before I tell you a bit about the book and what got me to write it. So I manage an amazing team. So that at SAP at the previous company, and they're incredible, very senior team with lots and lots of years of experience. And every year we would do like a small offsite. And this offsite, we would have like a small session where we do like a mini hackathon that has nothing to do with work. And it's for them to kind of like get their creative juices. And for me to, as a manager, to observe the dynamic between the team, observe how they're thinking, and just to kind of like look at what's happening. So 2 years ago, I gave them a task. You inherited a chicken farm and a cucumber farm. And your job is to fertilize the cucumber with the chicken waste. Um, some of like one team created this giant machine. They call it a chickinator. So they actually um, built it with origami, like built like how this machine. It's a giant chicken that it collects the waste from the chicken and then converts it and processes it into fertilizer, walks to the cucumber farm, and then releases the fertilizer. Another team decided we're going to train the chicken to defecate on demand on Dixie Chick's song. And they did this like Shark Tank style with put the music and they were dancing and they had like the entire system. So they came up like with such creative ideas. And then 2 years later, introducing AI into the game, I gave them a pigeon problem. So now you can book a pigeon to carry items from point A to point B. Small items, but these pigeons, they are pigeons. They
Mhm.
they can get lost. They can get distracted with snacks. And your job is to create a system where you can do the checkout process and then you can do the booking process.
Mhm.
Um, I had 5 teams on it. An hour and a half. They went into their own rooms. They came back. The 5 teams came up with exactly the same idea, an app for a chicken, an app for a chicken. Like, yes. And I was shocked and I was asking them, like, can somebody explain to me how would a chicken use an app? It was like, with the feathers? Like, I don't understand. Maybe I'm not from this world. Can somebody explain that? They started telling me things like, yeah, we're going to put a chip inside the chicken's brain and it will communicate with the app. And then he was like, but how are you going to put the app on the back of the chicken? And how do you put the phone on the back of the chicken? The chicken is going to fly with the phone and with the item. I mean, come on, this is real life. And then what I discovered is they took this problem and they put it in one of the AI products. And that was what they came up with. And because the problem, I said, oh, I need to check our process. And it immediately assumed that we're looking for an app. And they didn't think that, wait a minute, that's not logical. Like, this is not there.
Right.
So I
Right.
went home and I started thinking about that. Like, if my super senior team is doing that, imagine like a junior team or a team that is not experienced, and we're all putting the problem as is into AI. So AI is everywhere. You should see my mom using AI right now. She's like constantly with ChatGPT, like, hello, ChatGPT, can you give me this? Can you give me the recipe? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bye bye. I'm like, mom, this is not how it works. Uh, this is the power of having ADHD. I mean, being an ADHD person is amazing because I'm hyper focused. So I went home and I wrote the entire weekend. I just thought to myself, we as designers are problem solvers. And then there's the AI that is breaking everything that we know, but it's also breaking our skills as problem solvers. And
Mhm.
I thought, you know what? I just wanted to write my ideas and my thoughts in terms of where can AI be used and where cannot be used? How can I solve problems using like methodical approach without me going everywhere or without me like being very philosophical or putting like a lot of theory into it. And I just didn't drink, didn't eat, didn't sleep. I wrote constantly and I got the first draft for the 7 chapters, right? And then I started like giving it to friends just to see, am I crazy? Is this something that could resonate? And what I did is I took the design thinking process, which is a process that we do and we know very well when it comes to solving problems. And I broke it down into something that can be used in product, or something can also be used in everyday life. So if you're having a problem with your partner, or if you're having a problem as a manager, how can you take that problem and methodically break it down into bits and pieces from it is so messy, I don't know where to start, to, oh, I actually have a solution that I tested and I can actually scale it. And this is where the idea of the book came. It is still a work in progress. Like, I'm still editing and writing and editing and writing because I underestimated what it means to write a book. Basically, it is really hard.
Yeah.
The editing is really hard. But this was the idea of the book, and why I felt I wanted to write the book that I wish somebody gave me early on in my career.
Yeah.
And this is where it came from.
It's interesting design thinking too. I've been hearing even from creative directors that they're like, "I hate design thinking." Do you know where that the emotion is coming from?
Yes, it is now the big no-no word in the industry.
Why?
Well, because it became so popular at a certain point where
Mhm.
agencies use it as a checkbox, like we're doing design thinking, and it has to be this
Mm.
5 day sprint where we take everyone from their work and then we put them in one place and they have to collaborate. And the reality of the real world, it is not as simple as put everyone for 5 days or make everyone listen to each other. And that's how it started to have like a bad reputation. And now, especially with AI, things has to be fast. Like, you don't have that luxury to say, I'm doing the discovery process, which could be like 6 months process. You need to be fast and you need to deliver fast. And of course, delivering fast doesn't mean you compromising on the quality. It means you probably releasing features, but you're thinking about the risk. What is the risk of me releasing this feature? Can I take it back? Can I adjust on it? So there's like different techniques right now to do that. But I think this is where it started to have this not so great reputation, and
Mhm.
people will. I don't want to do design thinking. Like, if I tell now my team or my PM, we're doing design thinking, he's gonna look at me. Absolutely not. Yeah.
Right. So no design thinking, but there was a period where you mentioned that you were following the AI hype. It
Yes.
was, you was not sleeping, things were going
Yes.
crazy. Now it's like when did you realize it wasn't working?
When I started using it extensively.
Mm,
So, have you guys been through this period where you go on LinkedIn and the only thing you see is somebody putting a course on AI or somebody like saying, "Oh, integrate Claude with this, with
right.
your Instagram, and then replace your social media manager," and
Mhm.
or like, "I don't need designers because Claude is designing
Right.
everything." Yeah. So it was everywhere. It was my LinkedIn or it was on Instagram. It was like everyone's around me was talking about that. And I was like following it. I really thought that if I don't do that, I'm gonna be out of job. And
Right.
I right? Like you have this feeling like either you do that or you will be without a job and you'll end up in the street. And then you go through like a panic attack. It's like, oh my God, I need to do this. I need to do this. And then you start like following these tutorials and you start prompting Claude and connecting it to your Instagram and hoping like, yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna have 1,000 followers because Claude said that. Um, when I started seeing, oh, it doesn't work. Ooh, no, it doesn't really. It like nothing is working. And at first, you go through this period of I probably did it wrong. It was me. Maybe I should redo it or redo the integration. And then you realize like, no, it is just not working. It
Mhm.
could help you with your creative process, but it cannot replace the creative process. You still need editing yourself, right? So yeah, I gave up on this dream of automating my entire life. And I'm happy with automating like 10% of it. That's good enough
Yeah.
because I think we are at like maybe 10, 20% of the power of automation. And we still have a lot more to do for this tool to be powerful to say who would replace human. And maybe this is one of like my unpopular opinions, but I don't believe stronger than thinking. I don't believe that AI would replace humans and we will still have the creative edge. We still have the ability to use our brain in a way to connect two things that are not connected or to see something that the AI is not seeing. It cannot see context. It doesn't understand. It doesn't understand like how do I connect? Like for example, car walks on the ground, bird flies in the sky. I connect object carrying people on the ground to a bird. I end up with a plane, right? It cannot do
Mhm.
that. Each human can do that because our brains are wired for it. So yeah, I just stopped believing that it would replace us or it would be smarter than us.
I agree. I think it kind of turned into this just another social media topic to land on and not so thoughtful. Um, your history is very impressive. You worked as a leader in a lot of companies, and you could have easily left Miro and started your own thing again. It sounds like there's a little bit of a connection between your impact you want to make with AI and joining a company like SAP. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I really wanted to go back to working on the foundation of the tech industry. So at Amazon, because I was working in AWS, I was working a lot with management tools, and I felt like doing something is really really important because it either advances us as a tech industry or not. And I got the chance to work on not only creative projects, but projects that brought us here, right? So I worked on like AI projects before AI was a hype. And that was like really cool. And I was brought into Miro to build an enterprise offering. So Miro it grew organically after the pandemic. And then enterprise companies started to buy licenses. But there are certain needs like compliance, security, authorization. And with AI, they needed like more companies want more governance for these agents. Like, what can they do and what cannot they do? Because these agents have access to your data. So it was fun doing that. But at a certain point, you kind of build the foundation, and then you're like, what else? It's not like Miro is a fun collaboration board, but it's a SaaS company. I wanted to go back to the origin, and that's where I got the opportunity to work for SAP, where I'm working with Joule. So Joule and Joule Studio is the agent builder. So we allow enterprise and customers to build agents and automate processes in their infrastructure. And I think it's really cool because it first of all, it brings something to old enterprises that are not used to that. So old enterprises are used to their like we call it the on-prem servers, where the server is in the vicinity of the company. They don't like the cloud. They were forced to go to the cloud because of the pandemic, and now they're slowly forced to go into AI, but they don't really know how. So what we're trying to do is bridge that gap into how do we take these companies from the old world, which is not exactly very old, it's only 2 years old,
Right. Right.
to the new world. Um, and how do you do that in a simple way and easy way? And the second thing that I'm really excited about this phase of enterprise UX. We're used to UX enterprise being ugly. It's like, well, that looks from the 90s, these buttons that are super horrible. But with the bridging of the gap between enterprise UX and consumer UX, we started talking about consumer grade enterprise UX. So just because it's enterprise doesn't mean that it's not usable. It doesn't mean it has to be
Mhm.
ugly. It still needs to follow the rules. Um, so that's for me was like really interesting to go back to the roots and to go back to how can you actually influence an entire industry that doesn't want to move and it's still stuck in the old ways and they are forced to move and you're helping them in that movement. And that for me was really exciting. And that's why I joined SAP for that specific team actually.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a strange time too because I think AI, as you said, it also recycles the past. And there's not really for UX, there's not much innovation there. So there's lots of opportunity. But it's very confusing because there's all this talk about taste and craft and that and I've noticed there's like this overall sense of angst and confusion for those people looking for work right now. I feel like you have some internal insight on this. If you could talk a little bit about those core skills people need to be learning right now to kind of get past all this craziness.
It's funny, we as designers, we always talked about craft, right? And the interesting thing now is the AI can fulfill craft. I feed the AI my design system or any other design system, and then it's beautiful. It becomes perfect. So craft stopped being something that we actually look for. And what we look for heavily is the soft skills, problem solving, critical thinking, business thinking. Can you think about the business? Can you prove that you understand the business impact and the decisions that you are making the company better or making the product better? Then you have resilience because, as I mentioned, things are becoming faster and faster. You don't have the luxury to say, oh, I need more time to work on this, or to say, oh no, but this is my project and it is mine, and I will be very upset if you take it away from me. No, we need to have this like thick skin and resilience because anything can change. Tomorrow, any company can be bought by somebody else and any company can go down. Like, there's like, look at the news. There's companies I never thought they would close and they're gone or they were bought by a different company. So now we're looking at soft skills and we're looking at the fact, do you have AI proficiency or do I have to teach you from scratch?
Can you define AI proficiency? What that means?
So for design, it means, can you vibe code? Can I give you Claude or Replit or Lovable or any of these products? And do you know how to prompt to give me a prototype within an hour? Do you know how to use AI tools? Do you know how to build a solution for you if you can't find a solution out of the box. So this is what I mean with AI proficiency. It's not about how do you prompt or how you use ChatGPT or Claude. Of course, that would be super nice if that was the bar, but the bar is getting higher and higher. And I have seen designers doing incredible jobs. Like one of the designers who was with me in Miro, he created a game for Lenny's podcast on the Miro board, and he took he transcribed all the episodes, and then he converted them into a game with characters from the guests that were on his podcast. And I thought that was really cool. Like a designer with no computer skills, with no background, is able to do that. So this is the level that we're talking about in terms of AI proficiency, and the bar is getting higher and higher. So, and I understand now if you're not at that bar, you're competing with people who are at that bar. So it's a tricky situation, right? So you need to get better and you need to work on yourself and you need to work harder. And the tricky part, the harder you work, other people are working harder, the tools are getting better, so you need to work even harder. And unfortunately, this is the reality of the tech industry right now. So you need all of these soft skills, and also you need all these technical skills to be able to get a job. So it's a little bit tricky, and I understand. But there's still companies hiring, and when I was still at Miro, we were seeing incredible resumes, things I never thought I will see in my career. It was really beautiful. And it was so creative what people can do. So if I would recommend anything to anyone who's looking for a job or who's starting, try to see where can you break the limit. Experiment and put that experimentation in your portfolio. Because when you see a lot of portfolios and they have the same thing, and to be honest, now everything looks the same because everything is cloud generated. So to me, because I've seen so much, it's just like, this is exactly the same. So see where you break the pattern and where you can show some creativity, and that would make you successful.